What happens when a calm, friendly interview suddenly takes a sharp turn, and two powerful voices refuse to back down on live television? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The camera opens on the familiar set of The View, the audience already warmed up, clapping as the hosts settle into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the center, composed as always, her presence grounding the table. To her right, the panel exchanges light chatter, smiles, and nods. Everything feels routine. Whoopi leans forward slightly, looking into the camera. All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got a very special guest joining us today. Academy Award-winning actress. You know her. You love her. Emma Stone is here. The audience erupts in applause as Emma walks out, smiling, waving modestly. She greets the hosts one by one, a quick hug here, a polite nod there, before taking her seat. Hi, thank you for having me, Emma says, adjusting her posture, clearly comfortable but attentive. Whoopi smiles. We're glad you're here. It's been a minute. Yeah, it has, Emma replies, laughing lightly. I've missed this. The conversation starts exactly how viewers expect. They talk about Emma's latest project, her experience working with new directors, and how her perspective has changed over the years. So tell me, Whoopi says, glancing at her notes, this new film you're doing, it's getting a lot of attention already. People are calling it bold. Emma nods. It is bold, yeah. It's one of those stories that makes people uncomfortable, but I think that's kind of the point. One of the co-hosts leans in. Uncomfortable how? Emma pauses for a second, choosing her words. It challenges how we see power, especially in relationships. It's not always easy to watch. The audience murmurs slightly, interested. Whoopi tilts her head. And do you think audiences are ready for that kind of discomfort right now? Emma smiles, but there's a subtle shift. I think audiences are more ready than we give them credit for. Whoopi nods slowly, but doesn't fully agree. Sometimes people just want to be entertained, though. They don't always want to be taught something. There's a small ripple of laughter from the audience. Emma chuckles too, but then adds, I don't think it's about teaching. It's about reflecting reality. And reality isn't always comfortable. The tone is still polite, but something has changed. It's subtle but noticeable. Whoopi leans back slightly. But whose reality are we talking about? Because not everyone sees it the same way. Emma doesn't hesitate this time. That's exactly why stories like this matter. Because not everyone sees it the same way. A brief silence. Not awkward, but charged. Another host jumps in, trying to keep things balanced. I think what Emma's saying is, film can open conversations, right? Sure, Whoopi replies, but sometimes it also pushes an agenda. And people get tired of that. The audience reacts, some claps, some murmurs. Emma's expression tightens just slightly. She keeps her voice calm. I think calling it an agenda can be dismissive. Sometimes it's just someone's lived experience. Whoopi looks directly at her now. And sometimes it's a perspective that doesn't represent everyone. Emma nods slowly. Of course. But no single story ever represents everyone. There's a pause. You can feel the shift now. This isn't just promo talk anymore. The co-host beside Whoopi tries to lighten it. Okay, we're getting deep already, she laughs. We just got started. The audience laughs too, easing the tension for a moment. But Whoopi isn't done. I just think, she continues, there's a fine line between storytelling and telling people how they should think. Emma leans forward slightly. I don't think audiences are that easily controlled. That line lands. The audience reacts, some clapping, some surprised murmurs. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. You'd be surprised. Emma shakes her head gently. No, I think audiences are smarter than that. They can watch something and decide for themselves. Whoopi responds quickly. And yet we've seen time and time again how media shapes perception. Emma holds her ground. It influences, sure. But it doesn't dictate. People still have agency. The energy at the table is noticeably different now. The smiles are thinner, the pauses longer. One of the co-hosts interjects again. I think both of you are kind of saying something important here. There's influence, but there's also responsibility on the audience. Whoopi nods, but her focus stays on Emma. I just don't like when it feels one-sided. Emma responds, just as steady. And I don't like when stories are dismissed before they're even heard. The audience lets out a collective, oh, that's the moment. The first real spark. Whoopi exhales, a slight smile returning, but it's measured. Nobody's dismissing anything. We're just talking. Emma smiles back, but there's tension behind it. So am I. A beat. The camera cuts briefly to the audience, people leaning forward, fully engaged now. Whoopi taps her cards lightly on the table. All right, let's take a step back for a second, she says, her tone calmer but firm. We're going to keep this going, but we also want to hear more about the film itself. Emma nods. Of course, but the air hasn't reset. It's different now. As the conversation shifts back to safer ground, filming locations, co-stars, behind-the-scenes moments, you can still feel it lingering. The earlier exchange hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting. And everyone at that table knows it. The audience claps at a light-hearted story Emma shares, but their attention is sharper now. They're watching more closely, listening more carefully, because something real just happened. And it's not over. The conversation picks back up with a lighter tone on the surface, but there's a noticeable shift in how everyone is listening now. The audience isn't just reacting, they're waiting. One of the co-hosts smiles at Emma. So you mentioned earlier that this role pushed you in a different direction. What was the hardest part about it? Emma nods, taking a breath. Honestly, letting the character be unlikable at times. I think we're so used to trying to make characters relatable or easy to root for, but this one wasn't always that. People don't like that, Whoopi adds quickly, leaning slightly forward again. They want someone they can connect with. Emma glances at her, then back to the panel. I think they connect in different ways. Not always through liking someone. Whoopi doesn't miss a beat. But if they don't like them, they tune out. There's a small murmur from the audience, some agreement, some hesitation. Emma shakes her head gently. I don't know if that's always true. I mean, some of the most interesting characters are flawed. Flawed is one thing, Whoopi replies. Unlikable is another. The word hangs there for a second. Emma leans in slightly, her tone still calm but more deliberate now. But who decides what's unlikable? A couple of audience members clap, softly at first. Whoopi gives a short nod. The audience does. And audiences change, Emma responds. What people rejected 10 years ago, they might embrace now. Whoopi's expression tightens just a little. Or they get told to embrace it. There's a sharper reaction this time. Some gasps, a few claps, a few uncomfortable laughs. Emma doesn't laugh. She looks directly at Whoopi now. I don't think people are being told what to feel, she says. I think they're being exposed to different perspectives. Whoopi tilts her head. And you don't think there's pressure that comes with that? Emma pauses briefly, then answers carefully. There can be pressure anywhere. But I don't think storytelling is the enemy here. Another co-host quickly steps in. Okay, let me ask this, because I think this is interesting. Do you feel like actors have a responsibility when they take on roles like this? Emma nods. Yeah, I do. I think there's always a responsibility to be honest. Honest how? Whoopi asks. Honest in the portrayal. Not simplifying things just to make them more comfortable, Emma replies. Whoopi leans back, folding her hands. But sometimes simplifying things helps people understand. Emma shakes her head slightly. Or it removes the complexity that actually matters. The audience reacts again, this time more evenly split. There's a noticeable pause at the table. One of the co-hosts glances between them, clearly aware of the tension building again. Okay, she says with a light laugh. This is turning into a real debate. Whoopi smiles faintly. Well, that's what we do. Emma smiles too, but it's tighter now. And that's okay. For a brief moment, it looks like the conversation might settle again. Another host tries to steer things toward a specific scene in the film. There's one moment in the movie people are already talking about, she says, where your character makes a decision that, let's just say, not everyone agrees with. Emma nods. Yeah, I know the one. What was your reaction when you first read that? The host asks. Emma exhales softly. I remember thinking, it's going to make people uncomfortable. But it felt real to me. And that mattered more. Whoopi interjects again, this time more directly. But real to you doesn't mean real to everyone. Emma turns to her. Of course not. So why present it like it should be accepted? Whoopi presses. Emma's expression shifts, still controlled but firmer now. I'm not presenting it as something that should be accepted. I'm presenting it as something that exists. The audience goes quiet, listening closely. Whoopi nods slowly, but there's a challenge in her tone. But when you put it on screen, you are making a statement. Emma doesn't back off. Every story makes a statement, even the ones that pretend they don't. A few louder claps break out. One of the co-hosts raises her hand slightly. Okay, this is getting intense again. Whoopi gives a small smile. No, it's fine. We're just talking. Emma nods. We are. But the rhythm of the conversation is different now. The interruptions are quicker. The pauses are heavier. Whoopi looks at Emma again, more seriously this time. Let me ask you something. Do you ever worry that some of these roles might alienate part of your audience? Emma takes a second before answering. I think if you try to please everyone, you end up saying nothing. The audience reacts, some claps, some murmurs of agreement. Whoopi responds immediately. Or you end up losing the people who supported you in the first place. Emma holds her gaze. I think people evolve. And artists evolve too. Whoopi's tone sharpens slightly. Not everyone wants that evolution. Emma doesn't look away. That's okay, but it shouldn't stop it from happening. There's a noticeable tension now, not explosive, but steady and undeniable. One of the co-hosts leans forward, trying to reframe things. I think what's interesting here is that this is exactly the kind of conversation your film is trying to spark, right? Emma nods. Exactly. Whoopi glances at her. Or maybe it's creating division. Emma responds quietly, but firmly. Conversations can feel like division when people don't agree. The audience reacts again, this time with a mix of clapping and a few audible wow reactions. Whoopi exhales, shaking her head slightly with a half smile. You're not backing down, are you? Emma smiles back, just as steady. I don't think I need to. A brief silence settles over the table. It's not uncomfortable, but it's charged. The cameras catch a few audience members exchanging looks, clearly invested now. This isn't just an interview anymore. It's something else. Whoopi taps the table lightly again, as if resetting the pace. All right, she says, her voice measured. We're going to take a quick break. The audience claps, but it's different from before. Less routine, more energized. As the camera begins to pull back, you can still see both of them sitting upright, composed, but neither disengaged. Because whatever just started, it's far from over. The show comes back from break, and the energy in the room feels different, sharper, more focused. The applause is louder than before, but it fades quicker, like everyone's waiting to see what happens next. Whoopi Goldberg looks straight ahead, then briefly toward Emma Stone with a composed expression. All right, we're back, Whoopi says, her tone steady. We're here with Emma Stone, and we've been having a real conversation. There's a ripple of laughter from the audience, but it's knowing laughter. Emma smiles politely. Yeah, we have. Whoopi nods once. So let me try to come at this from a different angle. One of the co-hosts shifts in her seat slightly, clearly alert. Whoopi continues. You're talking about telling stories that reflect reality, even when they're uncomfortable. I get that, but there are people watching at home who feel like they're constantly being told their perspective is wrong. What do you say to them? The question lands heavier than the earlier ones. Emma takes a moment this time. I'd say, I don't think anyone's perspective is automatically wrong, but I do think perspectives can be challenged. Challenged or corrected? Whoopi asks quickly. Emma looks at her. Challenged. Whoopi leans forward slightly. Because it doesn't always feel like that to people. Emma nods slowly. I understand that. But discomfort doesn't always mean something is being taken away from you. Sometimes it just means something new is being introduced. There's a mix of reactions, some clapping, some hesitation. Whoopi responds, her voice a little firmer now. But what if people don't want that? What if they're happy with the way they see things? Emma doesn't hesitate this time. Then they don't have to engage with it. A few audience members clap louder at that. Whoopi tilts her head. But it's everywhere. That's the point I'm making. It's not like you can just avoid it anymore. Emma's tone stays calm. I think people choose what they engage with more than we think. Whoopi shakes her head slightly. I don't know about that. There's a pause, and one of the co-hosts jumps in, trying to soften things. I think what Whoopi's getting at is, there's a feeling out there for some viewers that entertainment used to be an escape, and now it feels more like a conversation they didn't ask to be part of. Emma turns slightly toward her. I get that. I really do. But I also think art has always been a conversation. Maybe now it's just louder. Whoopi looks at her again, this time more directly. Or maybe now it's more one-sided. Emma's expression tightens just a bit. I don't see it that way. Whoopi raises her eyebrows slightly. No. Emma shakes her head. No. I think there are more voices than ever before. That's not one-sided, that's broader. The audience reacts again, some claps, a few murmurs of agreement. Whoopi gestures lightly with her hand. But when certain voices get amplified more than others, it starts to feel uneven. Emma leans in just a little. That's always been the case, though. The difference now is that more people are noticing it. That line gets a stronger reaction. Clear applause from parts of the audience. Whoopi exhales through a small smile, but there's tension behind it. So now we're saying it was always uneven, and this is just fixing it. Emma keeps her tone measured. I'm saying it's evolving. Evolving for who? Whoopi asks. Emma meets her gaze. For everyone, ideally. There's a brief silence after that. One of the co-hosts glances at the audience, then back at the table. Okay, I feel like we're right on the edge of something here, she says carefully. Whoopi doesn't look away from Emma. We've been on the edge. A few audience members react with a quiet Emma shifts slightly in her seat, still composed but more engaged than before. Can I ask you something? She says. Whoopi nods. Go ahead. Emma pauses just long enough to make it clear she's choosing her words carefully. Do you think there's ever a point where resisting change becomes limiting? The audience reacts immediately, some gasps, some claps. Whoopi's expression changes, not dramatically, but enough to show she's taking the question seriously. Limiting how? She asks. Emma answers, her voice still even. Limiting in the sense that it might close off opportunities to understand different perspectives. Whoopi leans back slightly, considering. Or it might protect people from being told that their perspective isn't valid. Emma responds just as quickly. But I'm not saying anyone's perspective isn't valid. Whoopi nods once. But that's how it can feel. Emma tilts her head slightly. And I think that feeling matters. But I don't think the solution is to avoid those conversations. The audience claps again, more evenly this time. There's a beat where neither of them speaks. One of the co-hosts finally steps in again. I think what's really interesting is that both of you are talking about the audience, about what they feel, what they want, what they're experiencing. Whoopi glances briefly at her, then back at Emma. Because they're the ones watching. Emma nods. Exactly. And they're not all the same. Whoopi gives a short laugh. That's for sure. There's a slight easing in the tension, but it doesn't disappear. Another co-host adds, I do think there's something powerful about a conversation like this happening here, though, because people at home are hearing both sides in real time. Emma nods. And that's important. Whoopi agrees, but adds, as long as it stays a conversation. Emma smiles faintly. It is a conversation. Whoopi looks at her for a moment, then says, sometimes it feels like a debate. Emma responds, debates are still conversations. The audience reacts again, this time with a mix of laughter and applause. Whoopi shakes her head slightly, a small smile breaking through. You've got an answer for everything, don't you? Emma laughs lightly. Not everything. There's a brief moment where the energy softens again, but it's fragile. Whoopi taps her cards lightly on the table. All right, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one last thing. Emma nods. Okay. Whoopi leans forward, her tone more direct now. Do you think there's a responsibility, not just to tell stories, but to consider how those stories land with people who might disagree with them? The question hangs in the air. Emma doesn't answer right away. The audience goes quiet. And for the first time since the conversation began, there's a real pause that feels heavier than anything before it. Because this one isn't just about the film anymore. It's about everything they've been circling around. And everyone is waiting to hear what she says next. Emma sits there for a moment, the silence stretching just enough to make everyone in the room lean in. You can hear a few faint shifts in the audience, someone clearing their throat, a chair moving. But otherwise, it's completely still. She finally nods slowly. I do, she says. I think there is a responsibility. But I don't think that responsibility means avoiding discomfort. I think it means being thoughtful about it. Whoopi Goldberg watches her closely, her expression serious but not closed off. What does thoughtful look like to you? Whoopi asks. Emma answers carefully. It means not being careless with people's experiences. It means understanding that not everyone will see things the same way, but still being honest about what you're trying to say. A few audience members nod, and there's a light round of applause. Whoopi leans forward slightly. But honesty can still hurt people. Emma doesn't pull back. So can silence. That line lands hard. The audience reacts immediately, some clapping louder now, some clearly surprised. Whoopi pauses, taking that in. So you're saying it's better to risk hurting people than to say nothing? Emma shakes her head. No, I'm saying it's better to be responsible with what you say than to avoid saying anything at all. There's a quiet from somewhere in the audience. One of the co-hosts jumps in gently. I think that's an important distinction. Whoopi nods slowly, still focused on Emma. But who decides what's responsible? Emma exhales softly. I don't think there's one person who decides that. I think it's a process. It's listening, adjusting, learning, but not shutting down. Whoopi leans back, folding her hands again. And what happens when people feel like they're not being listened to? Emma answers, her tone softer now. Then that's something we have to do better. Across the board, the audience claps, more unified this time. There's a noticeable shift. Not a full resolution, but something closer to understanding. Whoopi nods once. I can agree with that. It's subtle, but it matters. Emma gives a small smile. That's a start. A few light laughs ripple through the audience, easing the tension just a bit. Another co-host smiles. Look at that. We found some common ground. Whoopi glances at her, then back at Emma. We weren't that far off to begin with. Emma nods. I don't think we were. For the first time since the conversation turned, both of them relax, just slightly. Shoulders drop a little. Expressions soften. But the weight of what just happened is still there. Whoopi looks toward the camera. This is what we try to do here, she says. Have real conversations. Not always easy ones. The audience applauds, stronger now, more appreciative than reactive. Emma adds, and I appreciate being able to have it. Whoopi nods. We appreciate you being willing to have it. There's a brief pause before Whoopi shifts the tone. All right, she says with a small smile. Before we go, tell people when they can see the film. The audience laughs lightly, the familiar rhythm of the show returning. Emma smiles too. It's coming out next month, wide release. All right, Whoopi says. Go check it out, form your own opinions, that's the important part. The audience claps again. Exactly, Emma adds. That's all I can ask. The camera begins to pull back slightly as the segment wraps. But even as the show transitions, you can see people in the audience still talking to each other, reacting quietly, replaying moments in their heads. Because that wasn't just a standard interview. That was something people are going to talk about. Later that day, clips from The View start circulating online. Short segments, Emma saying, "So can silence." Whoopi asking, "Who decides what's responsible?" They spread quickly across platforms. On social media, reactions pour in almost instantly. Some viewers praise Emma for staying calm and standing her ground. Others side with Whoopi, saying she voiced concerns that a lot of people feel but don't always hear on television. Clips are shared, reposted, debated. Comment sections fill up with arguments, agreements, disagreements. Exactly the kind of conversation they were having on the show, now happening everywhere. Some posts call it one of the most real exchanges the show has had in a while. Others say it got too tense. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. It didn't feel fake. Backstage, after the cameras stopped rolling, the energy was quieter. Emma and Whoopi reportedly spoke briefly off camera. No raised voices, no drama. Just a short, calm exchange. Not everything resolved, but nothing escalated either. Professional. Respectful. The kind of moment that doesn't always get seen. By the evening, entertainment outlets pick up the story. Headlines highlight the exchange, calling it unexpected, intense, refreshingly honest. Clips continue to trend. And for viewers at home, it becomes one of those segments people go back to watch again, trying to catch every line, every reaction, every pause. Because it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about two people holding their ground and still choosing to listen. Back on screen, the segment has ended, but the conversation clearly hasn't. And that's where you come in. What did you think about this on-air clash between Emma Stone and Whoopi Goldberg? Do you agree with Emma's perspective? Or do you think Whoopi made the stronger point? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.